HPRC for the PERTS grant. At this time, instead of just 3 speakers with a PowerPoint, we're going to open it up to a discussion. I'll let Rob explain that. Paul and Thibault are going to be the main speakers. NHPRC. This is our 7th of 8 webinars. One more December. I think it's on December 9th. And I'll turn it over to Veronica.
Thanks so much, Anne. Welcome, everyone. Just a quick overview. As Anne mentioned, we're going to do slightly a different format today. I'm going to start out with some quick review of the survey results from the recent Best Practices and Tools Subcommittee survey that went out. Then I'm going to just do a few quick definitions of some of the abbreviations and acronym soup that we deal with storage. At that point, I'll turn it over to Thibault for a short presentation. And then we're going to have a quick panel discussion highlighting some of the questions that came up as part of the survey results. Click in there. So as for the survey, 3 questions plus some demographic questions, and we got 18 responses, just under a third of possible respondents, which was pretty impressive given the really short turnaround time that we were working with. So thank you very much to everyone who participated with that. The first question asked what sort of storage options were being utilized with your states. Not surprisingly, it ranged the gambit from, nothing and some very unique and descriptive ways of saying nothing through different sorts of portable media, external hard drives, into your more sophisticated integrated network storage, offline tapes, and some of you even mentioned cloud storage, and a fair number of you were in a place where it's whatever your data center is using, not really knowing beyond that there's really in that aspect of things. Cost was also something that we about, and not surprisingly, there was a wide range here as well. For a lot of people, your storage costs are absorbed within your IT department, or they're really rolled into other budget lines, making it difficult to give sort of an exact amount. For those of you who do have more of a sense of your cost for storage, and they tend to be charged at more of a gigabyte rate. And again, that was a huge variance from 2 cents to $2.50, depending on the type of storage and how much maintenance and backup and such was rolled into that cost. Cloud, those of you working with cloud vendors or having states that are looking at sort of local clouds, tend to be priced out more in the terabyte and are in the $1,000 to $2,000 a year range. Some of the questions that you would like addressed, there are a lot of them, and it became very clear very quickly that we were really only going to be able to scratch the surface of the questions people had around storage. But we want to let the Best Practices and Tools Subcommittee wants to let you know that we are committed to making sure that those questions get talked about and answered. So sort of our interim solution is we are going to create a whiteboard in Basecamp where it will be parked for some comments and internal work among the subcommittee. But then as portal enhancements for the PERTS portal move forward, I'll be looking at having a forum or some sort of interactive capability where we can get those questions out and have people discuss them and get answers that people were looking for. Moving to the next section, definitions. Ended up being much shorter than I thought it was going to be, because the more I started diving into definitions, the more I realized I had more things I needed to define. So I decided to kind of stick to a couple of the most going to hear around. So you have data storage, which is sort of your direct cache storage, those things that are actually hooked directly to a computer or server, not part of a network. You can think of your internal hard drive of your computer as well. I realized sort of in this process, and I think it's good to throw out, is I often, immediately conflate the idea of a server and storage, and really that's not always the case. You can have specializations of what a server does. Either running applications or primarily storing files, and it can arrange. So sort of coupling that in my own mind was helpful, really helpful to you too. Let's see. Next, SAN storage, which is your storage area network. You're working with high-speed network of storage devices that are connected. It tends to be faster, but with that fastness, you also have the issue of greater expense. Also, there's NAS, network attached storage. You have the service dedicated to file sharing. It tends to be cheaper, but not surprisingly, it's also slower. So you either have, fast, expensive, or cheap and slower. Pretty standard dichotomy we run into. And then just finally, I wanted to mention unified storage or network unified storage, or NUS, because we got to shorten everything in our profession, which is really a shared storage device where you're really taking those ideas of the NAS and the SAN and combining those together. So we have lots more covered in ahead, and turn this over to Thibault for his part of the presentation.
Thanks. Thanks, Veronica.
Get you the mic just a sec. Oh, there.
Okay. Veronica, a further delay. Here's what we'll cover in this section. Distinctions and context of storage repository and preservation. Storage can help mitigate preservation risk. Content characteristics matter and can influence storage. The minimum profit, choices, placement, and control. Interoperability with content systems, repositories, and also access systems. Cost of all entails. Look at content allocation to the right storage, and we'll finish with chains and wrap with a recap. So let's get started. This is where storage repository and preservation functions reside and their relationship to each other. Storage classify when placed in the context where it's needed to be helpful. So those preservation functions that storage can help with. In the function of preservation, help with mitigating risk. Those risks in terms of threats and vulnerabilities. And for data and medium, storage can help with redundancy refresh. For infrastructure and process issues, storage can help with redundancy, refresh, and also diversity. Disaster and attacks, storage can help with redundancy, diversity, and inertia, which means protection of the data. When it comes to legislative changes, storage can help with diversity. Highlight all those functions or techniques that can be used in yellow. Now, those sub-functions of storage can also be informed with content specifics. The characteristics of content can be observed along with others. And with control of records at state archives or historical societies, the records we get are either mission information packets, information packets, destination information packet, or even metadata information packets. Records are either born digital or formatted to digital from physical. Either unique or duplicate instances, sensitive or open, and some are vital or critical as identified. Records are either or very low demand with various level of granularities in between. and shareable and after many decades, for example, 5 years. Should we look for when selecting storage? Storage medium ranking should take into account some basic properties. Whether it's lifespan of the medium, how much record it can hold, widespread adoption or external support, how quickly there's out the cost distance to elements and accident. Right, where it matters and serves the maximum level of control state archives or historical societies wish to have based on circumstances and law. The story left seem to be what's widely available to us. And they range near-line all the way to the most remote options, and all those have considerations when you use your option that would impact on what kind of control you have on your record. Third dimension, which is the likeliness of making any of these happen, we would know what the of every state is. So if you will use those, you'll be able to figure out which one is more likely and focus on where your effort will matter. Now, extremely important is you will interface with different systems and will need to be accessed at some point. What may happen are processes and systems. How systems click together immediately is owed to interoperability, and they're made to work after purchase is owed to integration. Interoperability is early and cheaper. Integration is after and very expensive. These ability standards and C and best practices can help with number one, to record long-term storage. And in category, you have VERSE, the Victorian Electronic Record Strategy, the VO package. You have Association SURF, with self-contained information retention format. You have EDRM's reference model. Number two, the content also need to understand each other and be able to pass along records to each other. And in this category, you have interoperability service and the storage management initiatives. First section, access systems, and they need to understand each other so record can be searched all across different repositories. What does storage cost? I must mention that these numbers are used for 5 petabytes as a test case. On the left, what cost fresh medium shown, and that from one storage to another. Cost is higher, less, and upper is very low cost. In the middle, was to retain records for a very long time. It costs more, tape less, cloud is a little cheaper, and gold is still the cheapest. And on a variety of and systems that could actually drive up storage costs, and what we phrase as total cost of ownership. Storage is not enough, and everything that goes around it is also very critical. This does actually influence storage choice and use. Other factors to consider when storage include record size, budget size, expert number, records, access, backup, attention. Range from disk, tape to cloud. cloud, as you see, and all is addressed there. We'll discuss that in the upcoming slides. Once all these criteria, you will be able to select the right storage for records, and it matters most and reduces your cost. As we can, optical available, it seems that this has been done maybe for new groundbreaking research have come about. That media more. Every day, as you can hear, there are groundbreaking research that actually about media that can store way more records than before, or way more data than before. The focus is on the news is on optical. It was Amazon Web Services growth and Facebook's optical implementation case that raises eyebrows. They know that actually is based on part disk and part optical. So what do we retain from all this? Is know your inventory, know your records, and I think have a separate addresses that. Large scale and in detail, so that way you can make informed decision about where to allocate the right record storage. With framework for interoperability, good choices, and establish choices, and hard look at total cost of ownership, implement sustainable options, and allocate content wisely. Linked, and when a good decision through the process, you should be able to enjoy a sustainable operation and prediction. Concludes this session, and I'm going to lead the floor back.
So, move the presenter back to me. I'm all set. Okay. Again, that was a very in-depth and detailed description of the choices and decision-making processes in making sure that we have the right storage in place. We're going to go ahead now and move into a panel discussion where we'll be addressing a couple of the questions that were brought forth in the survey. Joining us today for this discussion, we have Glenn, the Manager of Technology Analysis and the Support Branch for the Kentucky Department of Libraries and Archives. The unit is responsible for the management of electronic records archives, as well as application, training, and issue support for records management, archives, and imaging branches of the Public Records Division. His unit works with state and local agencies on records management and preservation issues, including coordination of a multi-agency electronic records working group that chooses policy guidelines on record issues. Joining us is Ellen Ramsey. Ellen joined the Connecticut State Library staff in 2010 as Government Records Archivist, became Assistant State Archivist in 2013, and oversees the State Archives arrangement, description, and preservation of state and local government records and environmental records of enduring value pertaining to history and heritage of Connecticut. Obtained the South American Archivist Digital Archive Specialist Certificate in 2013. Also, we have Mike Strong, who's the State Archivist of the Wyoming State Archives. He's been in that position since 2011, co-chair of the Best Practices and Tools Series Subcommittee. And finally, we have Matt Beach, State Archivist, and Matt Powell, Applications Developer 2 from the Kansas Historical Society. Okay. So our question is asking the panelists to describe their state storage situation. And Glenn, if you could lead us off.
Katie, I think I may be, oh, okay, I'm not muted anymore. Very good.
You're good.
With regard to the state storage situation, we have about 7 terabytes total with multiple copies of unique records, about half terabyte in our preservation system, which are about 90% photos. The state requires centralized storage, which is new during the past year, and that includes 2 types, the SAN and NAS, that it has been explained. Most often we use NAS because it's cheaper unless higher speeds are needed for retrieval.
Okay. And Ellen, could you address the question for Connecticut?
Yes. In Connecticut, each state agency with the state's IT approval can purchase and purchase its own storage devices such as servers and you know, I'm not on what each agency has exactly, but the state does not charge for storage. State IT is in its very early stages of exploring those options of charging for state agency storage space. Agency may have a number of any number of storage devices such as network storage, cloud, SAN. Much of the storage options have been discussed already. In regard to our situation for preservation in the Connecticut Digital Archive, we recently, in the last year, purchased a 98 terabyte SAN system, which was up at the University of Connecticut, and we are currently working on testing the electronic regulations of the Connecticut state agencies in there.
Okay.
The state agencies are using network-attached storage. Here at Archives, we are in the pilot phase of Begin Digital Archives program, and so when they submit records to us, we store on what they call Tier 2 storage, which is enterprise equal cluster. So we're moving to that. Also, Wyoming is a Google state, so each agency has that Google Mail, all the rest, and we are encouraged to use and save things drive. So those are the 3 main types here in Wyoming.
And Matt.
Yeah, we have a hybrid system here in Kansas. There's central IT that we take some advantage of their primarily SAN storage. The cost of that is fairly high, so we're kind of all about what we store using that very pretty expensive storage. It's about $2,500 per terabyte per year for that kind of storage. We will be, we plan to use that, have at least 1 copy of anything that's part of the digital archive stored that way. Part of what I wanted to talk about here was the fairly high capacity NAS storage that we have moved into, that we're managing ourselves at the Historical Society with our IT staff, and that's why I've got Matt Powell here with me in case there are any technical questions about this. But we fairly recently, I think it was like about 9 different network attached storage devices for a total of about 105 terabytes of available space. We're storing 54 terabytes of Kansas Historical Society digital assets, so that's some state archives, electronic records, but also many digitized objects from our collections, as well as digitized newspapers and a variety of other things. So we actually have pretty volume of materials, these NAS boxes, and the cost is, in comparison to some other options, it's actually relatively cheap. We bought 105 terabytes for about $50,000, which translates into about $445 per terabyte. So I just kind of, it doesn't have to. It's not it's not tier 3 storage. It's not the fastest. It's not the most reliable storage you'll ever find. But we find that it meets our needs for storage of objects that aren't accessed very frequently. And we're able to provide a fair amount of redundancy for that. So that's the situation here.
The question 2 deals with how many copies are you currently storing and how are you maintaining and managing them, keeping track of the multiple copies that you have. If we could go ahead and start with Alan.
Yes, anything that we digitize in-house, we have a master TIFF, and then we usually create derivative JPEGs for online access to put in. Right now we're using Content DM for that. Eventually everything will be moving into our Island DORA instance with the Connecticut Archive. As far as managing things in-house, we're using for our primary images that the archives and other parts that we have, we're using Extensive Portfolio, which is a proprietary system, but has a lot of advantages for creating metadata. As far as files, it's a general directory structure for managing that.
Okay. Nick?
In line, same thing with that Alan said in Connecticut about the images. We have a master copy and then a use copy of things that we scan here, especially the images. For the records from the agencies and the pilot project that we're doing, we put those into HP Trim, and so that's responsible for managing the copies. And in the digital archives, there's the working copy of the database, and then of course the production copy and the development copy, and then the archives is also backed up on tape by the state, by the FD department.
And
yeah, we basically have an approach where we want to make sure we have at least 3 copies of everything, and so we've got 3 different storage arrays, and so 2 of those are here at our building, our facility here, and then 1 of them is off-site. It's only 6 miles away, and that concerns us a little bit. We'll want to try and make sure that we get that farther away at some point. I'll let Matt Powell address a little bit about how we keep those, how we keep everything synchronized.
Storage is attached to some Linux virtual machines. We use an open source software application called rsync, which picks up changes in the data structure, is organized hierarchically. So file added to any directory will automatically, when told to be sent to 1 or 2 backup systems. And those really alternate. We don't back up to both the systems on the same day. That way, changes or deletions or anything like that, we have a little window to recover those. We'll take advantage of some incremental and snapshotting on our frequently used files. Large stuff, we don't tend to do that.
Okay, that's our situation here.
okay, Glenn.
Apologize, I did full search the first question, so let me go back to that. In addition to the SAND and NAS, we use removable media primarily for transfer, but we often keep the transfer media for a time. The state uses removable tape for some disaster recovery. State also has a hot site in New York for recovering major systems. This is up to both via FTP and by regularly sending hard disks for high volume data like GIS. In Kentucky, as part of our service, we currently use expensive cloud, the more expensive cloud on S3, but we might use the Glacier, the slower, less expensive for extra preservation storage. S3 storage is about 2,000 per terabyte, and Glacier is about 1,000. So moving on to the copies, we network storage areas located locally and in the cloud. We have a processing area where we place recent accessions, a database repository for access records, and cloud storage holding via Preservica. We plan to store 3 copies of all permanent records in the archive for records that are unique to the archive. If an agency is managing a large data set such as GIS images, we only keep one copy until the agency is no longer managing it. The copy on multiple media, both magnetic and optical, in multiple places, only the integrity checked, however, are managed from a preservation standpoint properly. Others are used as replacements for those files that are identified with error through integrity checking. Both.
Okay. Thanks, Glenn. Number 3. Do access considerations impact your storage decisions, and if so, how? Go ahead and start this off with Mike.
All right. For us in Wyoming, for a long time, we were just with our own records, photographs, things we wanted to make available for access. So making it available for access was our primary concern, and we used our network drives for that, the fastest storage we could get. As ours get larger online, we are thinking about the Tier 2 storage. We know that's a little slower, but so far it hasn't been much slower, and so we're thinking that would work okay for that. As we go to digital archives and start to electronic records for agencies, the opposite concern has been raised about preserving privacy. And so we're trimmed to manage a lot of those records, and it has DoD certification and the 99 levels of security. So trim can take care of us there. It was announced that Wyoming is going to cloud service provider, and that decision was made by our ETS, our Electronic Technology Services Department. We didn't have that decision, and so I'm interested to see how that goes with Greenhouse Data Company to see, because there are some concerns about the privacy of information on cloud. So we'll see how that goes in the future.
Certainly, access considerations impact the decisions we make about where we store things. I took this question a little bit, I'm not sure I interpreted it quite right, but we are generally, we use the massive storage devices that I described earlier, primarily used for master images, for kind of, for IPs, things like that. The access copies, the dips of whatever we're talking about, they're generally stored on faster storage and much more expensive storage that essentially resides as part of the web server that we are providing the access mechanism, the public access mechanism on. So, yeah, this is one where I may not address the question quite right, but we can explore this further as we go through the discussion.
And add the stuff that consider what's the word, critical, is hosted on our central IT department on the faster, more expensive storage. But much we only have 600 gigabytes. It's that we consider actually mission critical, both internally and to our audience.
Okay.
Glenn?
Yeah, I interpreted this question in two ways. One, the of access between various storage units, which is not automatically done, is not currently done automatically between the various kinds of storage units for multiple copies. But as public access, we have access through DSpace right now, and we moved from SAN to NAS storage and upgraded the system and gone to an Oracle database, and things are a little bit slower on that. So we'll evaluate what it is that's slowing down our response time on NAS storage. But we parallel all of our storage to similar kinds of constructs so that we can go from one to the other. We can access if the area that's being integrity checked on the cloud a copy that's did or problem with the integrity, we can get back to another copy on different storage based on its organization and metadata that we link between one storage area and the other.
And Alan.
As far as access considerations to impact storage, not really at this point, but I see it being a thing an issue in the future potentially. The digital archive is fairly presentation layer neutral, meaning you can click any presentation layer onto it. But mostly all the participants are using Islandora both to help manage digital objects and to then present them to the public. I can see where storage could become considerations in storage could become a consideration if you have a lot of things that could need to be restricted and the costs associated with that, but we haven't reached that yet.
Okay. And then for a scripted question before we open up a little bit more, what's the storage trending in your state? We'll go ahead and start with Matt on this one.
I guess in our state, we're really just kind of waiting for our central IT units to deploy a government cloud environment that they've been talking about and working on for at least 18 months. And so, here at the Historical Society, obviously we have high storage needs in terms of capacity requirements. And we're very interested in, and I think we'll continue to be interested in public cloud storage options, much like Glenn was talking about, whether it's Amazon S3, whether it's Amazon Glacier, or, something, perhaps even a DuraCloud brokered solution. But we feel like we need to at least wait and see our government cloud pricing is going to be like. I don't know, it's kind of an interesting approach. They've decided to kind of build their own government, private government cloud, and then they're going to deploy that and make that available to state agencies at a price that has not been named yet. And so we feel a little bit uncertain as to what our storage options are going to be in the future. But storage our requirements keep growing. Our don't seem to be growing to keep up with that. So we're constantly looking for lower cost options.
And
well, central storage, as in many states, is continuing to grow in Kentucky, and it's something we have no control over, and we're like Matt trying to figure out the costs and how we can fit in with the centralized storage approach. There's been a move away from optical media, even for imaging systems, and some tape backup is being replaced by network high storage. Use of cloud in state government is more and more common, and we're going with that trend with adoption of Preserca. Initially, there was some resistance to go to the cloud on the part of centralized storage, but we've worked with them, and they're okay with our using cloud. And certainly, cost and management issues for e-technology are driving the trends and the adoption.
Okay.
In Connecticut here at the moment, Central IT is currently in the process of relocating to a new data center. They've ran out of storage in their or space, I should say, in their leased area, and then also in the process of very early stages of just exploring the upcharging state agencies who may want to use Central IT storage space.
Okay. And right up with Mike.
Wyoming recently announced that they were going to move much of their data to the cloud, and the name of the company is Greenhouse Data. And there was an article about it, or a story on it, that aired on Marketplace on PBS. So if you go to the marketplace.org website, and it aired on September 3rd of this year, and it was state government's experiment with cloud computing, and then we'll kind of do a little review of what's on, but we are headed to the cloud.
And I just want to point out in the Q&A box, Mark in Texas mentioned that Texas Data Center has developed a government-run private cloud using Microsoft Azure as an alternative to high-cost live servers. In the case when you're trying out sort of a new format for these presentations, you never know exactly how you're going to go. So we're going to go ahead and open up a little bit earlier than I thought for any questions from the audience. You can go ahead and either put them in the Q&A box, or so I think there should be a written as well. Above the participants box, there's a little hand if you have a question you'd like to. Becky can unmute you. The day after the elections, and you're all happy to have 20 minutes back in your day. Okay. Last minute questions. Thinking. Oh, we have a question here. I'm going to go ahead and leave our contact information up. From Stephanie, has anyone experienced a negative impact of the cloud yet?
So this is going in Kentucky. Our big problem was getting stuff up into the cloud in any kind of high volume. In the connection between us and Amazon, there's a variety of points where things could slow down and things were freezing up. However, Preservica has recently changed the way they do uploads. They have what's transfer agent. So, and we've recently tested that, and that now allows us to put multiple gigabyte files up to, I think I tried 25 gigabytes at once, uploading to the cloud, and that was fine.
I'm glad you guys going to be using the new Preservica Access interface.
We have started testing it. We're in development. We've seen how our records look, but we need to clean them up before we're ready to go public on it. But yes, we are using the new they call Universal Access tool.
Okay.
I might mention, I didn't mention very much earlier, another place we store records are in Archivit, and I'm sure a lot of use Archivit, and maybe you don't necessarily consider that as part of their storage, but that's a cloud instance that has grown a goal in the archival community.
No point. Okay. No thoughts from our panelists? Nope. Actually, Matt, I'd like to hear from Mark. Or Becky, we unmute Mark if you'd be willing to talk.
Yep. You want to talk?
Okay.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. Because I've muted myself too. We are still, like everybody on the committee knows this, we're still kind of mired in our procurement process. We've issued an RFP for storage, or for an archival preservation system asked for both locally hosted options as well as cloud options. And the option was because our state data center was charging us something like neighborhood of about $1,000 per terabyte per month for their quote unquote live storage. That's like their active servers. And because we kind of showed them that that was like really high, they've gone out through their and contracted with Microsoft Azure as dark storage. They're out very slowly. They've offered that up to us. I think we're going to use it as kind of the immediate transfer of the 10 terabytes of records that we're supposed to get in January as basically just kind of a holding center, and you start putting them into whatever preservation system you put in. And it's just storage. It's not any kind of preservation media, and it's not really designed for access either. It's designed for kind of a dark archive type storage. It's still fairly expensive because they're operating as the middleman. If we contracted with Microsoft Azure ourselves, it would probably be cheaper. But that is an option that's being run by the state data center for other agencies, similar to what Matt was talking about there that Kansas is looking at.
Deep down the road, Mark, that whatever production system with workflows and whatever access it would have incorporated in it, it puts on top of Azure as the storage component of things. Will it really be moving it out of there into different storage that's hooked up to your preservation repository environment?
When we had some of our discussions with the state data people, because we're in the state data center already, we have to get an exemption to get out, and it's something that we can do if we can prove that we can find it cheaper and it meets our needs and all of that. It's discussions kind of talked about that, that we were ready to hear that, and that kind of took everybody by surprise. But they just started talking to Microsoft largely as that was just the first vendor to. They talk like they might negotiate additional resources with Amazon or Google or something like that. So it's something that we could potentially look at down the road.
Mm-hmm. This is Glenn again. The model for DuraCloud is to have multiple storage vendors and use them for different kinds of purposes. The cloud storage, but that model of having some interoperability is there. And in the case of Preservica, they have two types of storage, and they have worked up a routine so that it could automatically go to a storage unit or even to a local unit. So that kind of interaction and having one centralized database for all of the multiple copies, I think is the trend that's developing among a number of kinds of systems.
So, just curious, for states that have records in the cloud, have you figured out what the cost will be in case your cloud provider is going out of business? How much it costs to transfer a record from one cloud to another or get it locally?
Well, currently in Kentucky, we're able to transfer the record, download them locally, or and we haven't done it in a great way because we want the additional storage to be coordinated with storage that's in the cloud, and we're talking to Preservica about how to do that, how to make them both be coordinated and refer to one another and automatically dump into additional storage.
How much did your test? How long did your test take?
Our initial test was a 6-week period. on that was about a year ago, and we didn't put a large amount of in during that 6-week period. It was mostly becoming familiar with the capabilities. We've had the system for about a year, and we have currently about a half a terabyte in the system.
Thank you.
Another question in the Q&A for anyone. Let's see. Oops, it moved on me. Do you do anything to actively identify and protect against data corruption, such as from faulty or failing disk?
Well, it is something that's vital to preservation, and we through the Preservica system for those records that are in Preservica, we've done checksums for all of the other, but we don't means other than for DSpace and Preservica to regularly check the checksums for integrity.
This is Matt. I'm in a similar kind of situation where checksums on we store checksums about on all the objects, but in the end of a fully deployed digital preservation system like a Preservica, it's pretty challenging to do integrity checks. So is very right that that's essential to what we do, and I think we're all moving towards that. But having the proper set of tools to do that can be a bit of a challenge if you're on the budgets and limited staffing.
Well, I think too, checksums address the files and data corruption themselves, but I think there's an element to this question as well around the hardware. Maybe the other Matt in Kansas, do you have any thoughts around, sort of monitoring and maintenance of hardware and the disks themselves?
The monitoring software. We've several different things in place. We've got the NAS hardware we have has its own proprietary software that we can look at, and that all tends to be mixed. We can tell if the disk fails. Network-wide monitoring that look at every single system. In a lot of cases, you from a single server talk to the RAID controllers in some of these hard servers. And so pretty much the minute a RAID goes into decay, we can know about it. And we have our disks on hand, and we can order another spare disk pretty much immediately. The software we use for that is called NEOS, and it's pretty widely used. I'm sure many people have heard of it. Do we need to talk about the SERI stuff that we did, or no? Okay, that's not good. Yeah, mostly the Nagios thing is what I wanted him to talk about, and the fact that we can just kind of do almost real-time monitoring of all the devices that are sitting on our network, including the RAID controllers themselves.
In Kentucky, it's centralized storage does all of that RAID analysis and copying over and having multiple copies, so that it automatically goes to another disk when disk fails or is starting to fail. So that's managed at a high level by IT.
And ideally, that's how it would work here. It's just that we've had to take over because of the high cost of that central IT storage and our ability to run our own. We've gone ahead and implemented our own system, and so we're just kind of describing how you would do it if you had to do it yourself with limited staff and limited budget. Many of this is just open source software.
We have an additional cloud storage question from Bill. What kind of security issues have you had to address, or are you anticipating with cloud storage?
In Wyoming recently, we've had we've had to do data sharing agreements with ES and as a go-between in between us and agency and ETS. So that, for us in doing the digital archives, regardless of the cloud. But as we move to the cloud, I'll be very interested to see the kinds of agreements that ETS negotiates with our cloud provider. And obviously, we're asked for input into those.
Perska and but you've just some assumptions. We're given a presentation by Preservica on how Amazon handles integrity, and it's at a very high level given their requirements and that sort of thing. But there's no guaranteed assurance. When we were doing the contract, we were told that you keep them responsible for a file that or a group of files that get corrupted. So that's why you construct this elaborate amount of copies and restoration capabilities because that within network storage and cloud storage. As far as security, we aren't putting any records yet in cloud. So we're just dealing with local security on files that are supposed to be closed.
This is Matt. Obviously not using cloud storage yet, but I think we would make a similar kind of decision as we got started with cloud. Is not, we would just be very, very careful and likely not to put records are sensitive out there. Also, one of the reasons that we're building our own private government cloud here in Kansas is, kind of concern about kind of the commingling that occurs with public cloud and the inability to guarantee that the state of Kansas records are not being stored the same box as state of Kentucky records, because Kansas and Kentucky don't like each other that much.
They both begin with K, though.
It's only a basketball problem. That's all.
Right.
Okay. So comment from Mark about DSpace, that it can be set to run jobs that periodically run checksums on the system. So, well, that takes us down close to the top of the hour. I'd like to say thank you to all of our his wonderful presentation, and to all of our panelists, their insights for what's going on in their states and in storage, in the storage environment in general. As was mentioned at the beginning, we have one more coming up for the SERI Best Practices and Tools, and that will be in early December. So we look forward to that up. You'll be receiving your post-webinar evaluation immediately after this, and feel free to visit the COSA website for more information about upcoming webinars, as well as the slides from this webinar will be available there as well. Thank you all so much for joining us.